Chapter 3.4, Proving and Ruling a Journal. As we kind of come to the end of Chapter 3, we now need to what's called Proving and Ruling a Journal. Basically, this is a check and balance to make sure we've done everything correct in our previous transactions. So before we get going, three good questions there. When an amount to be recorded in a journal is in even dollars, there is no need to record anything in the cents column. Is that true or false? That is technically false. Next, when cash is paid for utilities, the amount is recorded in the, is it cash credit column in general debit? Is it sales credit and general debit? Is it general credit and cash debit? Is it cash credit, general credit and sales credit? Well, the correct answer is cash credit, general debit, and the general debit column would be your utilities expense. A journal entry includes, is it the debit part of the transaction recorded under one date and the credit part recorded under a later date? Is it the debit and credit parts of the transaction recorded in one place? More debits than credits, or none of the above? Hopefully this is an easy one for you, but the debit and credit parts of the transaction are recorded in one place. All right, so we get to the end of the, you can see in this journal we've gotten to the end of the month or the bottom of the journal page. And in order for us to kind of check our work, so think about proving a journal as kind of like in math. If you do 6 plus 2, if you do 6 plus 2, you know that it's 8. If you do 8 minus 2, you know that it's 6. So it works forward and back. This, in a sense, is we're checking our work to make sure we did every transaction correctly. If there's errors, we have to go back and fix them. So all we're going to do is we're going to take our debit column totals and we're going to add them up and compare them against our credit column totals. So step by step is first we take our general debit column, we add them all up, and we get 1379. Then I take this over into my up here and I just place it in this chart. This chart makes it really, really easy. I'm going to take my general credit column total, which is 2,500, pretty easy math. I'm going to add that up. I'm going to put that in my general credit column total. I'm going to take my sales credit. Now notice there is no sales debit because we really won't debit sales until the end once we are closing entries, so you don't have to worry about that. Or maybe correcting, but you don't have to worry about it for now. 600 is there, so sales credit. So we will leave the sales debit column blank, okay, and that's okay. Maybe if you want to draw an X over it, color it through, you can do that too. Next, my cash. Well, our cash debit column is 2,500, so I'm going to add it up there, and then I'm going to take my cash credit column. I'm going to add it all up here. 205, 404, 170. I'm going to get 779. I'm going to add it together. Now I'm going to take my two debit column totals, my general debit and my cash debit. I'm going to add them up, ring them up. I'm going to get 3879. I'm going to take my credit column totals now, and I'm going to take my credit column totals and I'm going to add 2,500, 600, and 779. I'm going to add them up, ring them up, and by the magic of accounting, these two numbers should match. If they do not match, you have done something wrong in the above transactions and you need to go back and fix it. Okay? Do not pass go, do not collect $200. Do not do anything else until those two numbers equal. Also, do not assume that just because your general debit column and your cash debit column totals add up to 3879, don't assume that your credit columns are correct. You must do the math. If you don't do the math and you move on, you will get a massive headache, have more gray hair than me, and my stock and ibuprofen will go up. And I thank you for it as I tee off on the first hole of my golf course. So after we do that, now once we've proved it, let's just say in a situation that we're not done for this month, right? It's the 27th of February. There's a day, depending on the year you're watching this, there's a day or two left in the month of February. So let's just say if we needed to start a new page. Well, if we need to start a new page in a journal, this is called carrying over, okay? So what we're going to do is if you take a look at our transaction, actually, let me pause there. I'm going to back up because I got ahead of myself. We need to prove cash. So after we've proved the journal, I'm sorry, pause. We need to prove cash. The beginning of the cash balance of February 1 is 0. The balance in the next unused check stub is 1771. You'll see this in your assignment. So what we're going to do is we're going to prove cash. Basically, we're just trying to make sure this is the second check and balance to make sure we've done everything right. Cash on hand at the beginning of the month, they told us in the directions up here that it's 0. So we're going to put 0. Total cash received. Remember, received cash equals debit cash. So we're going to take our debit cash column total of 2,500 equals total. So 0 plus 2,500 is 2,500 less cash paid, paid cash, credit cash, my credit cash column total of 779 equals the balance at the end of the month. So basically we're taking our cash received minus our cash paid, and we're going to get 1721. Now, magic that should happen via accounting is that 721 should be the balance on the next unused check stub. Don't just assume that number is there. Make sure mathematically it does. Again, these are steps that are simple, and oftentimes students will just assume that it's right because they can get to one number. Don't assume. Make sure your math is correct. Otherwise, you are going to create way more problems later on. Now, moving on, let's just say, back to my other point, let's just say it's the 27th and we have a couple more days left in the month. Depending on which year you're watching this, we might have 1 or 2 more days in the month of February. Well, we need to start a new journal page, so we're going to need to start journal page 2. So in order to start journal page 2, we have to do what's called brought forward, carried forward. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add up all of our general debit and columns just like we did when we were proving it. Okay, we put the date 27. We are going to write the word carried forward in account title. And the reason we're putting carried forward in the account title is because we are carrying this sum on to the next page. So it's a continuous, it's a cumulative journal that we're working with. I'm going to put a check mark in the post reference. Again, I'll tell you that later why that is, but it has to do with posting. You'll understand more next chapter. We draw a single line underneath all the columns. Single line means addition, means we are adding them up. So I'm going to add up this column. I'm going to get 1379. I'm going to add up my general credit, get 2500. I'm going to take my sales credit. I'm going to get 600. I'm going to take my cash debit. I'm going to get 2500. I'm going to take my cash credit. I'm going to get 779. I then go open my page 2 of my journal. I'm sorry, once I've verified that my debits and credits equal, I'm going to draw a double line, which means that, yep, everything's good there, we're safe. If your debits don't equal your credits here, like I said, general debit and cash debit, if the sum of those two, so if the 1379 and 2500 doesn't equal the cash credit, sales credit, and general credit, 2500, 600, and 779, do not pass go, do not collect $200, don't do anything. Get those two equal, and because you have an error in one of your transactions. So this is that check and balance again, because you imagine how big of a mess it would be if you didn't fix that and you just continued on to the second page. You have a really big mess that would be really hard to find. And again, my stock would go up. So this is page 2. I'm going to put that on there. So I have my page 2 over there. I need to make sure that I do that. And really, all I'm going to do is I'm going to write the same date of the transaction, 27. Now, instead of carried forward, I'm going to say brought forward. So I carry it from page 1 and I bring it to page 2. Carried forward, brought forward. No doc number is needed here. Okay, I'm going to put in that check mark, that's for later, and all I'm going to do is just transfer this straight down. So 1379 in general debit is going to be a 1379. 2500 is 2500, 600, 600, 2500, 2500. Now, why do we do this? Well, we do this because remember when we were proving and ruling cash? If I don't do this and it's the end of the month, which happens on page 2, my cash paid and cash received is going to be different than on page 1. Than if I did do this. So it's a cumulative, it's ongoing. So we need to make sure we do the carried forward, brought forward. It's a very simple process, but oftentimes if students forget to do it, their numbers will be way off. If you're doing it on paper, you have a lot of erasing. You're kind of at that bad point where you almost have to start over if you don't do it. If you're doing it on paper, if you're doing it on Excel, you can just do a real simple equals whatever that cell number is above and bring it down. Works out pretty slick. But again, this is really key because your proving cash will be off if you use multiple pages in your journal and you're proving cash at the end of the month. So after that, you can continue on for the rest of your transactions like we did here. And then again, once you're done with it, notice it's the 28th for this year that you're watching it. we are going to prove and rule. Single line means we're going to add it. We're going to put 28. I'm going to put totals now because it's the end of the month. It's totals. Again, carried forward means we're going to be starting a new journal page. Brought forward means this information came from the previous journal page. Totals is the end of the month. No doc number, okay? So I'm going to add up my general debit and credit. So 1936. Now here's the reason why. So we add these up, 2,500, 6 sales credit is 965, cash debit is 2865, and cash credit is 1336. If we don't do this, let's go back to our previous transaction when we prove cash at the end of the month. If we didn't do this, it would be 365 and then it would be 557. That's not going to prove cash. Rather, 2,500 and 779. We have a much larger amount than that $150, $200 that we have here. So you need to make sure that carried forward, brought forward. Big key component. Once we've verified that our debits and credits equal and we've proved and ruled, then we draw our fancy little double line on the bottom, knowing that we're all good and we're ready to move on to the next month. So we'll finish up this lesson with just 2 good questions here. A single line ruled across the journal amount columns indicates the date is the last day of the month. The totals have been verified and correct. A cash transaction is to be recorded. None of the above. It is none of the above. The single line means that we have added them up. Okay, at the end of the month, even if a journal page is not filled, cash is paid to the owner for personal use, cash paid on account liability, the journal page is proved and ruled. None of the above. We always, at the end of every single month, we always prove and rule the journal page as I presented to you. Hope this helps. Again, don't forget these steps. They're real easy, and if you do forget them, they really cause big time headaches later on. Good luck on your assignment. Talk to you soon.